welcome back to Morning Live. And May is the Lupus Awareness Month, and trust me, lupus is not a disease that you can just go around and play with it. But still, as I told you earlier before we took a break, this is an ailment where your white blood cells now fight you. You remember back, maybe if you're not a scientist, or maybe back in high school, for those who took on biology, antibodies, antigens, trust me, very integral parts of your body just to make sure you actually survive, you're actually in good health. But look, your own soldiers are fighting you. In studio, I'm joined by Dr. of course, Angela Migoa, who will be telling us about lupus. And trust me, as I told you earlier, I failed to understand how white blood cells can just one day decide, we're finishing you. Your protectors indeed. Lupus. What is lupus? You can just define for us lupus.
So thank you, Nick, for having me over, and really I commend you and your team for trying to raise awareness
for
this disease. So lupus. Lupus falls into the bracket of what we call autoimmune diseases. Okay. What does that mean? Each and every one of us have an inborn defense system, which we call the immune system. Now, the sole purpose of that immune system is to be able to protect you from foreigners that attack you, similar to what our defense system does for our country.
It's true.
So it's to protect you from foreigners that want to attack you. And who are these foreigners? Most of the times, these are the germs that cause disease. These are the abnormal cells that end up being cancer, okay? But in lupus, there's a confusion that happens in this defense system, such that now it doesn't not only focus on the foreigners that are trying to attack you, but it begins to attack your own body. Wow. And therefore, I give an example that it's like an army having a coup on its citizens.
Strange.
Your army is supposed to protect you from foreigners invading your country, right? But now you have a situation whereby this army begins to attack the body itself. And that really is the fundamental problem in lupus. And because of that, therefore, you can imagine these are patients who would have symptoms from anything ranging all the way from your head all the way to your toe, because your defense is everywhere. It has to protect you.
Interesting. Now, as much as you're talking about your defenses coming to protect you, and at that time, they're eating you up, at the same time, foreigners are coming in. Now, you have nothing to protect. Now, how did this go about? Because now, for example, malaria comes in, typhoid comes in, any type of maybe flu comes in. So that means you're exposed.
Exactly.
So how does you treatment? Because now it's so strange. Because now is it a matter of coding?
So I mean, you're absolutely right. In fact, even worldwide, the number one causes of death in patients with lupus is infection. For the very reason which you yourself actually have highlighted. Because now your defense is confused. You know, simple things like a flu or a sore throat can put you down completely. So, in theory, if we were to fix the problem, I should give you a new army. I should give you a new defense. Unfortunately, that's the prerogative of the creator, whatever you call him, Allah, Christ, Buddha, whatever. All right? Because your defense is actually coded by your genetic makeup.
That's the coding part.
That's the coding part. You know, that's why Nick is as tall as he is. You know, that's why your shoe size is as big as it is. It's all within your code. So, given that we do not have that privilege to give you a different coding for your army, what we then do, we try and retrain your army. And tell your army or your defense, take it easy on the body. Stop attacking the body too much. Focus your efforts on the foreigners, all the germs that are causing the diseases. And that's what we do with our medications. I'll make a disclaimer, though, that there are some very severe cases of lupus which don't even respond to the kind of retraining that we offer with medicines. And so for these select patients, there are people who attempt to give you a different coding by doing transplants.
Okay.
Because when you do a transplant, gene transplants, then therefore you're able to give somebody a different code.
Yeah.
But those are very rare cases. And even in countries where they have unlimited resources, it's not what people prefer to do, because that also comes with its complications.
Sure.
Yeah.
Symptoms.
Yes.
Of course, I read somewhere you will have some very funny, like, is it ashy look on your, just below your eyes?
Yeah.
And then like the butterfly shaped,
yes.
something like that. Maybe give us more about the symptoms.
Yeah. So there's a very common phrase that lupus has 1,000 faces.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
And that phrase just captures the diverse presentations you could have with lupus. Remember, I'd mentioned your defense system is in every aspect of your body, from head to toe. So the symptoms can be very subtle, like all of a sudden you have poor concentration.
Wow.
Or for the ladies with their hair, even gentlemen, you know, you're combing your hair and you've noticed it's falling off more than usual. Other things are the rashes that you've mentioned. And you know, the classic rash is what we call the butterfly rash. And the butterfly rash, typically, it's normally on your cheeks. It spares the crease just around your nose. So this area is spared, but it's normally around your cheeks and could go over the nasal bridge. But there are many other rashes. Some people, the minute they go out into the sun, the areas exposed to the sun gets a rash.
Is it itchy?
Sometimes it is. Other people sometimes get a rash that leaves scars. When the rash is healing, it leaves a scar. Permanent scar. Other people, they have red spots on their skin. And they keep seeing so many doctors and the red rash doesn't seem to go. Other things could be simple as your eyes feel dry, your mouth feels dry, or you're always having bleeding tendencies, always nose bleeding, even sores in the mouth, sores in the nose. You could have lots of chest problems. And you know, people are looking for TB, they treat TB, nothing. You've always been treated for pneumonia, nothing. Others, their heart is not working well, so everyone thinks your heart is failing, but they're not able to figure out why is your heart failing, because you don't have blood pressure problems. When it comes to the joints, your joints could be swollen and painful. You could have weakness.
Arthritis also comes in?
Yes, yes, exactly. So, and then also your kidneys sometimes are not working as well, so you begin to get into kidney failure. You're leaking protein and blood in the urine. So, you know, anything from head to toe could present as the initial symptom for lupus.
It's clear it's messed up. It's clear it's messed up from arthritis, from all those things you've mentioned. But I'm very sure there's hope.
Of course. That's why we do what we do as rheumatologists.
Maybe tell us more about that now. There's hope in this.
There's hope.
Sure.
So whenever we manage lupus patients, we share with them that our goal is to achieve remission. And what does that mean? It means that this defense, this army which was confused, we want to retrain it. We want to retrain it to a point where it is still strong enough to fight off the germs that cause infection, but we're telling it relax also, so that you do not begin to attack the body. Now we do that using medications. Medications which are available in this country, and some of those medications include medicines like steroids. Right. The other group of medicines.
Maybe what do they do? Steroids? Because I know steroids. You know, guys. Of course, guys want to keep fit. But also they want to look shredded at some point. So steroids, I understand some people inject steroids. Some people kind of whatever means they use. But now, what do they do to a lupus patient?
So going back to the issue of the army. Just like the way in our army we've got different cadres of soldiers, I don't know, a major,
lieutenant,
colonel, all that,
major, captain,
So
colonel.
it's the same thing with your defense. You have got different cells which have different capacity, So when we give steroids, what the steroids do, they help tone down the action of these cells. Because for these cells to work, they need something to like jumpstart them most of the time. So that means your body produces some chemicals. And now what the steroids do, they reduce the production of those chemicals. The other thing that steroids also do, remember we said most of these things, there's an issue with your coding. Yeah, at the genetic level. So what steroids also do, they're able to enter into the cells, go into where your coding is, and try and alter. So that you don't be too hyper and fight the body. So the steroids are key in helping to contain, but you know they have side effects.
So prescribed steroids.
Prescribed steroids, yes. Sure. And they have side effects. So we don't like to give steroids for too long. But the good thing about steroids is that they achieve the effects quickly. So in order to have a sustained effect, we have what we call the disease-modifying anti-rheumatic drugs. That's a mouthful. We call them DMARDs. And most of the DMARDs are actually the medications we use also for cancer. The only thing is, in rheumatology, we use them at slightly lower doses.
Reason?
Because for the effect that we want, because we are retraining. You know, most of the time, in cancer cells, in cancer cells, you want to kill the abnormal cells. We are only interested in retraining. So we don't need
a lot of it.
We don't need such high doses. So that's the second big category of drugs. And it's important to say this because sometimes when we put patients on these treatments and they look and they say, but this is a cancer drug. I don't have cancer. So we tell them, no. You don't have cancer. It's just that some of the drugs we use, the cancer specialists also use them. It's just that the dose is different and the duration is different. So that's the second group of drugs. There's another third group of drugs. Remember I said that for your defense to work, the cells in your defense, sometimes they need some chemicals to jumpstart them and to coordinate their functions. Those functions are coordinated by the chemicals. So now we have another group of drugs which are manufactured and target specifically those chemicals. And those chemicals in medicine, we call them cytokines and interleukins, big names. So these medicines, they target specifically those chemicals, and we call those ones biological therapies. And those two are available in the country, of course, for select patients.
Interesting. This is a very powerful conversation. Lupus, May, of course, is the awareness month. And Daktari, when you come back now, will be telling us more about, as much as we're talking about solutions and the treatment, there's an aspect of course, you realizing its symptoms. She's already mentioned them, but now, how faster should you now visit your doctor by the time now you get to realize what you have? The tests, of course, we've talked about even cancer, we've talked about so many things. It exemplifies in so many things. So when you come back after the break, Dr. will be telling us about you as a patient or as a potential patient when you realize how fast you actually have to go to visit your doctor. All the coming to you in a short while. Keep it Morning Live. All right, welcome back to Morning Live. We're talking about lupus, and of course, May is Lupus Awareness Month, and Dr. Angela Migoa from Aga Khan University Hospital is with me in studio. And trust me, this is not a funny disease, because now when you talk about your white blood cells attacking you, that means you're in trouble. It's not funny, by the way. Something that's supposed to protect you now puts you down. Interesting. The swiftness of someone identifying this problem now. That's what I wanted our viewers to know. Because now, as much as sometimes we leave the house, we go to the physician, this maybe clinical officer, the doctor. Anakuuliza leo unasikiaje leo? Naambia the procedure, the general procedure. Then now, medication is given, laboratory tests, nothing is found, no malaria, no typhoid, nothing, given medication, supplements, vitamin C, those things, or your immune system is down, go, this is a generic kind of prescriptions you're given. Now, you come back again, it's worsening. Now, how will you know? Because now, by the time someone tells you, you need to undergo lupus tests, arthritis tests, all those things. How could we survive from this now?
So what I normally tell patients when I meet them, you know, in medicine we have a phrase that commoner things occur more commonly.
Oh, okay. Once again, commoner?
Commoner things occur more commonly.
Okay,
so for example, today, if we start sneezing, chances are we are developing a flu, because that's what is more common, isn't it? For example, if somebody has been coughing for 2 weeks and longer, you start thinking of TB.
TB.
Isn't it?
Sputum?
Yes.
TB.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But if you begin to develop symptoms and people are looking for the common things, and you do tests once, twice, 3 times, it is negative.
Yeah.
And then you begin to see different systems beginning to have problems.
Shutting down.
You know, remember we say that your defense is in every part of your body, head to toe.
Yeah.
So maybe you started with the chest, then all of a sudden your heart is having problems, then your hair is falling off, then your kidney has problems. Yeah. Then you need to start thinking of an autoimmune disease such as lupus. Now, lupus, unlike many other diseases, you know, malaria today, if you have you suspect malaria, go to the lab, get a blood test, it confirms. For lupus, there's not one single magic test that if you do,
it's lupus.
It's lupus. No. And this is really where the art of medicine really comes in. Because for you to make a diagnosis of lupus, you need to do an exhaustive inquiry of their symptoms to try and better understand, like, what are the interventions they have tried, and did those interventions work? Okay? So an exhaustive inquiry, which we call in medicine history taking. You know, now you're like a detective, an investigator.
Sure.
And the second step that is very critical in the diagnosis of lupus is a thorough physical examination. You examine head to toe, because there are some things that the patient might have, but they didn't notice that they had them.
True.
I'll give an example. Lupus patients, quite a number of them normally have an ulcer at the roof of their mouth, but it's not painful. So they will not know that it is there. But if you don't look as the doctor, you will not see it. And this is important because, you know, we're in a digital age. And sometimes we get patients giving us a brief story that, oh, you know, I was coughing 2 weeks, I tried an antibiotic, I'm not feeling well.
Antihistamine.
So, Dr. What can you recommend? I personally discourage that, because one thing, you need to do an exhaustive inquiry, then I need to examine you properly, you know? And then that way, once you have your history and examination, that actually forms 80% of what you need to confirm the diagnosis.
It's true that.
Then after that, you then request for specific investigations that will add on to what you already know. And this is important because then we would then curtail the culture of doing a whole battery of tests, making people spend so much money, and at the end of the day, we don't know what the problem is, leaving them in a worse state. You're still unwell, we have depleted your financial resources, and we have not fixed the problem, okay? So that is really the stepwise approach we use to diagnose lupus. But some of the key tests that are important when we are thinking of diagnosing lupus is requesting for what we call auto-antibodies. You know, antibodies are some of the components your defense produces to protect you. So there are certain autoantibodies. One that is very well known is what we call the anti-nuclear antibody, or ANA. Okay, that is quite known, and sometimes it's really misused because somebody just does one test, it's positive, then you're labeled as lupus. But I'm here to say that is not sufficient.
Now the cost. Because as much as we're talking about treatment, there must be some cost implication here.
So the truth of the matter is, having a disease like lupus in our country is quite costly. Costly from 2 perspectives. Number one, remember I said there's no magic test. So most of the time, these are patients who've seen several doctors, you've paid several consultation fees, you've tried several medications which you have to pay for, you've done several tests. And therefore, by the time you actually get to the point where you're beginning to think of lupus, most of the time, a lot of finances have been spent. So that's one angle, all right? So, you know, how do we empower the health system to be able to identify these patients early and refer them to appropriate clinicians in good time. That's another discussion altogether. Then there's the angle of, okay, so we do know that you have lupus. Now, some of the tests that we do for lupus have to be outsourced sometimes. And from an economic point of view, you know, if a test is not being done frequently, a laboratory might not invest much in doing it, all right? So you have to outsource it. Now, if you're going to outsource the test, they have to pay for its shipment to wherever it's been sent. That lab will charge its cost, and it has to be shipped back. So it's expensive, all right? And then the other thing is, when you start them on treatment, you know, most medicines are broken down by the liver and your kidney gets rid of them. So you need to monitor and make sure that the body is tolerating these medications well. So you have to monitor the treatment. Again, that has a cost. So that's just the investigation part. Then you have the treatment part. Remember I said some of these things are not as common as malaria, for example, or TB. So we don't really have a national program to make these medications available. So I'll give you an example. There's a patient we treated this past week and had lupus and needed to get a specific medication, which also the cancer patients get. It's called rituximab. Now, one vial of rituximab, a vial is normally a small bottle, costs 400,000. One.
And how many do they need?
And they're going to need probably 3-4 doses in a year. Now, can you imagine the burden on that family? And that's just the medication. And this is medication, for example, our cancer patients with the support of NHIF are able to get. So, you know,
the lupus patients, do they have maybe support by NHIF or maybe the cover?
So what I know, I think there are some efforts that are actually ongoing to see how well we can be able to accommodate patients, not only with lupus, you know, other chronic diseases, other autoimmune diseases. But as it stands now, we do not have an access program for our lupus patients, as we do, for example, for our oncology patients. Yet some of the medications they use are similar. So you can imagine now the financial burden. So in a nutshell, it is expensive.
It is very
and
expensive.
For the ordinary Mwananchi, they cannot afford it. And so we really need to have a very candid discussion. How do we make this available? Because as was declared by the head of state with his agenda for universal health care, nobody should be made poor as they try and access medication and health care.
It's true that. It's true that.
Now,
transplant. Of course, one of the solutions to this. For someone who doesn't understand how it's done, is there some DNA affiliation in this, or how does it actually work?
So like I mentioned earlier on, I'll say this with a disclaimer, right? Even in the best centers in the world, this is not the first thing they go for. This would be considered if all the logical steps of medications have failed. But when you're going to be doing transplants, you know, like a bone marrow transplant in this case, remember I say that your defense, the hallmark, is to distinguish foreigners from yourself. So today, even if I had a sister and, you know, I needed a kidney transplant, and she wanted to donate it to me, if they introduce that kidney into me, my defense will recognize it as a foreigner. So it will begin to attack. It's not 100% identical. So that's why before transplants, they normally do what we call HLA typing. And what that means is, you know, the reason why Nick is Nick and Angela is Angela, all your cells have a unique identifier tag on them, which we normally call HLA molecules. Unique, that's why you're Nick and I'm Angela. So whenever something is introduced to me from somebody else, my defense will realize,
this is a foreigner.
This is a foreigner because that's unique identifier tag. We don't know what it is. So it begins to attack. And that's where sometimes the challenge is, because you now have to look for somebody who has a unique identifier tag on their cells, which your defense will not fight back.
It's true that.
Exactly.
Amazing. Okay, on a scale of 1 to 10, maybe, just here in Kenya, how is the disease being managed, and maybe the frequency of patients coming to you guys and saying, hey, finally it's lupus? How is it managed, and of course the frequency of infections?
Okay, so worldwide and globally, it is well known that lupus is actually more aggressive and more serious among the African and the Asian people. It is well known. The other fact which is well known, if you were to have a a clinic with lupus patients, let's say 100 of them, okay, 20% of these patients will be children. So this is a disease not only of adults, but also of children. Okay. And in children, it's known to be actually more aggressive, all right, than it is in adults. So you can imagine the burden on the children. The other thing which we have seen in our practice here, together with our my colleagues, the adult rheumatologists, that actually when you look at a clinic which has rheumatology patients, patients who have got autoimmune diseases, diseases where your defense attacks you, we're looking at about 15 to 20% of them are actually lupus patients. The rest have other diseases, like arthritis, what we call fibromyalgia. So it's not as rare as people think it is. And in the continent, we have our colleagues from Nigeria, Professor Adelor, from South Africa, Professor Chris Scott, across the continent, even in North Africa, they have actually documented cases of lupus. And that information is really on the World Wide Web.
Okay, interesting. As you're ending up, I am very sure it's not only lupus that is really affecting people. We have arthritis. Maybe another ailment.
So as I said, rheumatology, we deal with diseases where your defense attacks your own body. And these diseases, as you rightfully highlighted, include lupus, include arthritis. We have something we call dermatomyositis, where you've got it's a tongue twister, where you've got skin problems and the muscle disease. But actually, so that it's easier for people, remember, the reason why your body is composed as it is and your body parts are not all over the place is because your body is held in place by what we call connective tissue. All right? Now, in rheumatology, we study diseases that afflict this connective tissue. So that's why your muscles would be involved, your bones would be involved, your ligaments would be involved. So that includes dermatomyositis, arthritis, other things called Behçet's disease, other vasculitic diseases. That means that you have got problems where the blood vessels are attacked. All right? And that's just a summary of some of the things that we deal with as rheumatologists.
It's good to know that we have solutions also. That's the perfect thing. Anyway, thank you so much, Dr. That is Angela Amigoa from Aga Khan University Hospital for coming. We've learned a lot. Trust me, even the crew, myself, we've learned so much. And good job you're doing, actually. As much as the cost is high, I believe saving a life out here is very important. Of course, very informative. Thank you so much.
And thank you too for having me and raising awareness. Thank you.
We're taking a short break. Now, when you come back right to the Morning Live, we want to talk mambo ya usanii. Trust me, musicians out here are really struggling to make ends meet. And of course, I had actually a chance to talk to one from Rongai who told us about just cutting a coat according to your size. Trust me, this will be a very interesting conversation. All that's after a short break.